Have you ever do saying, it ain't over till it's over? Well, today we're diving into some of the most epic moments in history when one side declared victory only to have it snatched away in the most dramatic These are the stories of premature celebrations and jaw-dropping comebacks. Our first story takes us to the Battle of the Little Bighorn in 1876. Might know it as Custer's Last Stand. Lieutenant Colonel George Custer, a famed Civil War hero, was leading the 7th Cavalry against a massive encampment of Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors. Overconfident and underestimating his enemy, Custer divided his forces, believing he could easily crush them. His initial attack seemed successful, scattering some villagers. Victory felt close, but he had walked into a brilliantly orchestrated trap led by legendary figures like Sitting Bull and Crazy Horse. The initial victory was just a bait. Custer and his entire command was surrounded and wiped out. It was a stunning short-lived triumph for the Native American forces, but a brutal lesson in why you should never celebrate too early. Fast forward to the 20th century, specifically the Vietnam War and the Tet Offensive of 1968 for years. The American public had been told the war was going well, that Teddy was light at the end of the tunnel. U.S. military leaders genuinely believed they were winning, that the enemy was on the brink of collapse. Then in the Vietnamese New Year, or Tet, the North Vietnamese Army and Viet Cong launched a massive, coordinated surprise attack across more than 100 cities and outposts in South Viet. They even breached the walls of the U.S. Embassy in Saigon.
Militarily, the offensive was eventually beaten back with heavy losses for the attackers.
So, in a tactical sense, it was the USC victory, but psychologically, it was a devastating defeat. The sheer scale of the attack shattered the illusion of an imminent American victory. News footage of the fighting flooded American televisions, turning public opinion decisively against the war. The enemy's apparent defeat in the Tet Offensive ultimately led to America's withdrawal. It was a victory that felt, and in many ways was, a loss. Now let's jump to the world of sports, where premature celebrations are practically an art form. Picture this: Super Bowl 51, 2017. The Atlanta Falcons are absolutely dominating Tom Brady and the New England Patriots. With a 28-3 lead in the third quarter, it looked like the game was over. The Falcons were flying high. Their fans were celebrating, and the championship trophy was practically in their hands. They felt victorious. But they made a crucial mistake. They took their foot off the gas, and you never, ever do that against Tom Brady. What followed was the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history. The Patriots clawed their way back, score by score, ultimately tying the game and forcing it into overtime for the first time ever. They then scored a touchdown on the first possession of OT, winning the game 34-28. The Falcons' celebration turned to ash. It was a heartbreaking lesson that the game isn't won until the final whistle blows. Our final story comes from the world of politics, the 1948 U.S. presidential election. Incumbent Harry Truman was widely expected to lose to his Republican challenger, Thomas Dewey. Polls were so certain of a Dewey victory that newspapers went ahead and printed their headlines before all the votes were counted. The Chicago Daily Tribune famously ran with the massive headline,
Dewey defeats Truman. They had celebrated their correct prediction too early.
But as the final votes from the West Coast trickled in, an astonishing upset unfolded. Truman had won. The next day, a beaming Truman was famously photographed holding up that very newspaper, a triumphant grin on his face. It became an iconic symbol of political comebacks and a powerful reminder that in life, just like in war and sports, you can't call the game early. So what's the common thread here? Overconfidence, underestimation, and a failure to see the bigger picture. These stories teach us that victory is never guaranteed and defeat is never final. The moment you think you've won is often the moment you're most vulnerable. It's a lesson for the ages. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed these stories of incredible turnarounds, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing tales from history. See you next time.